Pierian, I think, is a real spirit in Bristol, and it's a cultural spirit. It's a wonderful support to lots of people. I think it's an inspiration to Bristol, to its people and to the City Council, and I think that it has got the City Council thinking in different ways. It's a home to a lot of people. It's always a welcome. And it's a healing place. It couldn't be a more important place to Bristol, and I think it leaves a great legacy.
The word Pierian, I mean, to me, it comes with that fountainous feel. I mean, June chose it. She wanted something to do with inspiration, and looking through books with quotes and so on, she found the Alexander Pope thing. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring.
When I first discovered it, I was on holiday, and we had no reference books. So I rang my parents up and said, "What does Pierian mean?" And they went off to all their books of reference, of which they had many on their shelves. And they came back half an hour later on the phone and said, "Right, we've got a book here and we've got a dictionary." And they'd done all this research and kind of discovered what the word meant.
And it is a spring on the slopes of initially Mount Parnassus, Mount Olympus. The Greeks kept moving down southwest through the Peloponnese, and each time they'd locate a sacred mountain, and yes, this is our sacred mountain, and the muses have to live here, so we'll find a spring. There's a spring. That's the Pierian spring.
What I wanted was to set up something that really reflected that Pierian quality of knowledge and inspiration, and gave people a place where, by the way that we looked after people and the environment, supported them in learning more and being inspired to be who they are and be the full potential of who they're capable of being.
It felt as though we were one of the first combining the different worlds. We're a social enterprise, we're a community interest company. We're not a branch of social services, and we're not a cultural charity. We've got no core funding from grant-giving bodies. We have to pay our own way. So the involvement of the corporate world is crucial as a source of income, and it's not a kind of a Robin Hood thing where we're ripping them off in order to do good elsewhere.
We have a corporate conference facility alongside health and well-being and complementary health practitioners, ranging from massage and kinesiology to acupuncture to counselling, hands-on healing, spiritual healing. We have the laughter club, we have yoga, we have groups who meet here once a month who are learning from each other as a sort of peer group about coaching skills in the corporate world. They might be here the same night as the gay tantra class. They all have tea and coffee in the morning room. And that's the place where all those people will bump into each other. Sometimes they don't converse, but they're still around a very different group of people from what they would necessarily normally be around in their normal working and everyday life.
Well, one of the greatest services that Pierian Centres offers is that sense of people come here and they get a sense of sort of looking outwards, not because necessarily they've come to look outwards, just because there are so many other things going on, and they just sort of see it, that kind of process happens naturally.
The leaflets in our racks obviously manifest the full spectrum of things that we do. So people in the coffee breaks will be browsing the rack, and you know, we know we've had a number of bookings in both directions. People coming to a weekend course because they've picked something up when they've been here on a training day for in their corporate existence, and likewise whether it's Doors Open Day or someone coming to a Tibetan chanting thing or yoga class or whatever on a weekend, picking something up and saying, oh, I see you do weddings or you do conference facilities, you know, I must take this back to work. So to us a beneficial kind of cross fertilization, and an important on the ground bringing people together, and a reminding of the corporate world that they do not exist in a separate accountancy universe where the only thing that matters is the profit that they make at the end of the day, and that they can discharge their corporate social responsibility in a kind of a layer of icing on the top of the cake. Their corporate social responsibility has to be imbued in you know, the whole cake. Every mouthful has got to be engaged with the world around them.
1, 2.
We did an amazing team training day with John James, who's the conductor of the Bristol Ensemble, who said, I want to come and use you as guinea pigs to see if looking at values of an organisation can then be presented in music. And what it did was it brought us to 4 values that seemed to be really powerfully embraced by the Pierian Centre and how we've worked.
It was just breathtaking, just how beautiful this place is. It's all the details, like you come in and there's a lovely smell of lilies, you know, the flower of peace. That brings you in, you know, and then you go from the chocolate biscuits to the lovely coffee, to the lovely tea. Everywhere, there's just a welcome everywhere.
It doesn't matter what they've come to the door for. You know, sometimes people just come to the door because they're lost and they want directions and all that. But they're just as important. And they also have a valid sort of Pierian experience.
You feel equal. You feel you are the same people. You don't feel, yeah, maybe you are, you know, as an asylum seeker, or maybe you are a small community. You're just treated as everybody, as equal. So I think in that way it really helped us, you know, everybody to feel, you know, comfortable.
A couple of times there have been things on at the same time that stereotypically you wouldn't expect to be sympathetic towards each other, but there's sort of an air of respect in the Pierian Centre.
I think it was that sort of feeling of fairness towards everyone that made it easier for people to actually feel sort of feel at home here and feel comfortable.
Decided really to go for it properly at Bristol Speakers Corner in March of this year, June had the idea that we should once again have the reenactment of some of the greatest speeches that have ever been made in the modern era. But he is a wonderful actor and he's come from London again to celebrate today, help us celebrate today, and right now is about to give you the Martin Luther speech.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great telephone. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Must have been George III, signed into law the abolition of the slave trade in the British Empire. We put up a website and tried to get people all around the world at 12 noon ringing bells, and it was fairly primitive, but we got people in Antarctica, in Zimbabwe, in Sierra Leone, in Australia, in Canada, in various parts of the States, France, and around the UK, and a good crowd here. It was a moving moment because June's mum, who'd been ill, she'd had cancer for years, but had, in true Joe Burrow style, had fought it off and battled on. And she finally died. At that moment, her last thing was ringing a bell, which could not have been a finer way to go, and I think must have symbolised for June the fact that her mum understood what June was trying to do here. That was the end of one thing, the end of June's mum, and the start of us doing an increasing number of big bold events.